A story popped up recently that Lollipop Chainsaw RePOP is not being covered by games media due to releasing uncensored, which has made the journalists furious, so mad they won't even pretend to do their jobs. We know if they did, they'd be given it the lowest marks they could think of anyway. This is a very silly game. It's basically Buffy the Vampire Slayer with the fan service cranked up to 10, putting a cheerleader in a skimpy outfit and having her kill zombies. It was always more cult classic than mainstream, capturing a lot of fondness for the game despite some iffy controls and shallow story, but just like Metal Gear Rising, it is a game that is meant to just be a game. Some defenders of the game's media who are so ideologically captured they spend all their time trying to deny journalism as a festering stool of ultra-political uniformity that have been making excuses like, it is a remaster of a game, thus below the notice of the illustrious journalists, even though you can look at recent remakes and remasters like Persona 3 Reload with 70 reviews, Super Mario RPG with 120, Nier Replicant has 100 critic reviews, to see that they would absolutely review this type of game. The other excuse being used is that the game is too small. If the game is comparable to the Concord launch, and Concord had thousands of articles about it and almost 50 reviews. Or Dustborn, which also received massive journalist advertising before launch, with 20 reviews and a 7 score from critics, despite 400 user reviews giving it a 1.0. And Dustborn barely caught 10% of the all-time peak of Lollipop Chainsaw. If we just think with a nugget of logic, it's easy to be convinced journalists are intentionally shunning the game. It is not 2024's biggest launch, but a game that is nonetheless similar in size to games they regularly cover. Why would they not cover it? Ideology. This is one of the most male-gaze games of all time. At this point, you are never going to convince someone who either refuses to accept that games media is entirely activists, or who is an activist themselves that agrees with their brand of puritanicalism. But everyone knows, experience, personal run-ins with this nonsense that has wakened them to the destruction brought by the woke. Nothing I say can be as convincing as watching something you personally love, like Star Trek, Star Wars, DC Marvel, Doctor Who, D&D, fantasy or sci-fi books, War 40k, video games, and more getting infected and ruined. That's a mere fraction of what has been dragged down by the woke Puritans. Right now, Amazon is destroying Lord of the Rings, Fantasy's Bible, turning Sauron into a bottom bitch for an evil glue-sniffing Galadriel. Journalists, activists, certain devs, the execs in charge of AAA studios are all to blame for this ruination of all the things we love. Evil can never create, but only corrupt what good people have made. So if you look at it with a bit of logic, recall the wholesale slander of the studios behind Stellar Blade, Wukong, and Hogwarts Legacy. Activists got people fired from Hogwarts Legacy over their social justice inquisition. They literally went after people's livelihoods because they hate the woman behind the world of Harry Potter so much they will literally do anything to ruin it. Anything aside from not reading the books, seeing the movies, and playing the games, since they are addicted hypocrites. We all can look at what happened with Lollipop Chainsaw and say, this fits their pattern of thought. Astrobot is not getting great sales, potentially. Family game on a console that abandoned family games. It mixes references for longtime Sony fans with fun gameplay aimed at an audience that is now all on the Switch. Astrobot is an amazing game. It belongs in the same space as Mario Galaxy, but that's the problem. It's not in that space. It's in the same space as The Last of Us, God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon. Narrative, large cinematic games. It's in the space of the PlayStation 5, not the PlayStation 1 or 2, which had Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Klonoa, Jak and Daxter, Sly, Sackboy, Ape Escape, Parappa the Rappa. The only thing we have left is some crumbs of Ratchet and Clank. The first PlayStations enticed adults with a variety, but it still had plenty to keep children. That audience is long lost. There's zero question today that the Switch is the child console. So while Astrobot is an amazing game, it is a game made for an audience that is on another console. Now, we do not have official numbers, and since it's a PS5 exclusive, we can't even see things like Steam charts. We've only seen some weekly sales from some countries, and they give mixed messages. It may have done decently, it definitely has been very well received by just about everyone who has played it. I suspect it will be a profitable game, but it also will not be as impressive in sales numbers as we expect for a game that is likely a solid Game of the Year contender. Dragon Quest III Remaster is completely censored to appeal to Western Puritans, with the same mindset as a Satanic Panic, except now it's about covering up women rather than violence in games, or, as they like to call them, Type Bs. Even the Japanese are getting pissed off by the woke West's nationalistic tendency to colonialize all entertainment and make it appropriate for modern Western audiences that don't exist. Everyone finds this offensive. Like all things woke, the only people who ever want this are the corporations and their loyal stooges. Tales from the Shire, what can we even say about this? This is for people who are obsessed with the Harfoots and Rings of Power and fantasize about them having a massive orgy with the entire group of them in their filthy homeless tents. That is the sole and only target of this game. It looks like an awful mobile game. And if you just watch their promotional materials, AI has already replaced these people because everything they promote is promoted in the same way, by the same people, saying the same nonsense that zero gamers care about. This is another game that is not made for you, but you can bet your Neville Longbottom you will be blamed when it ends up a massive flop. No, really, check the trailer for this thing and tell me this isn't the result of AI prompt, create me a trailer that a DAI studio would make for a Lord of the Rings game. Even as we see successes from AA or indie studios this year, and their new IPs flourish like Stellar Blade and Wukong, we cannot forget that there is an infection in the gaming industry that will always strive to bend gamers to its will, rather than try to appease the gamers with what they love. If you enjoyed these thoughts, like and subscribe, or leave a comment with your thoughts on these little stories.